This module will outline how to manage the core activities with ThinkTank. When you start running ThinkTank, there are 4 different types of screens you need to manage. You have the management of the login screen, both for yourself as a session leader and for the thinkers. Secondly, you need to manage the administration or home screen, where you have a list of all the sessions that you participated in and where you can start new sessions from, change passwords and things like that. The third screen, which is the session leader screen, which is the main screen you use to build and execute sessions by when you are a session leader. And the last screen are the thinker screen, which is showing part of what is on the session leader screen. Secondly, you need to manage the use and setup of different devices interacting with ThinkTank. Participants in ThinkTank can actually use any type of device that has a browser on it, as long as it has a newer browser. This also goes for cell phones, mobile phones, so people can participate with that. However, on cell phones, of course, the screens are restricted, so you don't see the same scope of content, but people can participate with tablet and cell phones as needed. When running a session, it is important for the session leader to recognize that in order to manage it, he or she will need 2 screens to follow along. The first screen is the session leader screen that the session is managed from, and then the second screen will be the thinker screen. Thinker screens are in face-to-face meeting typically used to link up to the projector, or for virtual meetings, the thinker screen stands next to the session leader screen, so the session leader always can see what the thinkers are seeing. In order to start right for a session, there are a few things that a session leader needs to be attentive to. First of all, it's a good idea to ask the thinkers to log into the ThinkTank session before the official start time, because that gives enough time for the thinkers to log in, taking the time they need, and also if there are certain technical issues, there's a potential that these can be solved before the start time, and this will ensure that the session start time is not delayed. Secondly, it's also important to check if it's a physical meeting, face-to-face meeting, that there will be enough power plugs for all the participants. Normally we calculate with a minimum of 1 per person and 2 for a session leader. Third, and this goes especially for off-site locations like hotels, airports, public conference centers, retailers, and Starbucks and other types of locations, when a number of participants, typically more than 15, try to interact with ThinkTank. There's a good chance here that you might get into issues with the capacity of the wireless internet and routers. So in these specific situations, you will have to check with the technical responsible for that offsite location in terms of how much capacity they actually have and how stable the internet is to support the use of ThinkTank. Last but not least, it's always a good idea to start a session at least somewhere in the start to start the session with an icebreaker. An icebreaker is typically a no-risk ThinkTank session where people get familiar with ThinkTank, but at the same time doing something fun and motivating and quick with ThinkTank via the internet. And that actually prevents people from having certain issues once they start seriously using ThinkTank for some important activities. Third, a session leader also has to manage the most common technical issues that might arise within the thinker and participant group. And here are a number of the normal issues that arise in a session. First of all, by far the most common one is that a thinker has a problem with no connection to the wireless router or the internet. And that is typically a network issue, which needs to be resolved by ensuring that the PC or device is actually on the wireless network. It could also be sometimes that a wireless router is not working correctly. There are conflicts. So a reset of the wireless router can sometimes help and remove this problem. Second issue would be error logging in. Normally that actually originates from the thinker actually putting in an incorrect URL, username, or password. So we try politely to ask them to try again and make sure that they input the right things. It can, in certain situations, also be because the thinker are using a too old of a browser. So too old browsers would, for instance, be IE8 or IE9. And in this situation, you just ask the thinker to use another browser or to update the current browser if they don't have another browser on their machine. If the problem arises where people complain about that they don't see the right things, most times this is due to the leader which has probably forgotten to press the magnet in the top right corner, or it could be that a thinker has been logged out for a certain time or logging in, and then they don't see the same activity as the rest of the group. But in any case, the fix here is to press the magnet. In certain situations, this can also be due to a too old browser and the browser solution I just covered a second ago. Fourth issue here, I don't see my contribution on the list. This depends normally what type of activity the group is in. Either it can be that the thinker has actually forgotten to press return to input a contribution in the box at the bottom. In a presentation activity, it could be that the leader has moved slides forward in the presentation deck, and any comment that a participant or thinker has made is specific to a specific slide, and then if the leader moves forward, then of course the participants and thinkers cannot see the specific contribution made. In a crowdsourcing activity, it is typically because the thinker has not clicked on the right contribution in order to see comments about that contribution. So that means that they cannot see the sub-comments of a comment or sub-comments of a contribution. Another option is, of course, that a thinker or maybe even a session leader has moved a contribution from one place to another place. Last of the most common problems would be that a user is stuck and cannot do anything on ThinkTank. This is typically either a browser issue or a connectivity issue. To check for the connectivity issue, you have to figure out if the thinker has a red connection in terms of the bars on top of the screen. Or you can check on the leader screen into the thinkers tab whether there's a red or a green dot where the name of the participants are. If they are red, it's an internet connection issue and solution has been covered above. If the indicators are green, then the potential fix will be to ask the thinker to refresh the browser window. If a refresh doesn't work, ask them to close the browser out and then restart the browser and log in again. In most situations, this will fix the problem. So these are some of the most common issues that a session leader needs to manage. Last but not least, the session leader, of course, needs to manage the different activities that the actual contribution or the actual collaboration is all about. Here's a list of some of the normal activities that you can do with ThinkTank. There are a set of visual activities. The by far most common one here would be the presentation activity, where you can upload a PowerPoint presentation and discuss comments for each of the slides. Also, the welcome activity is also very commonly used because that's the start or landing page where you can add a tailor-made picture to welcome people to the ThinkTank session. Of the crowdsource activities, the most commonly used one is the standard crowdsource activity, which is basically used for any kind of ideation, brainstorming, discussions, comments, note sharing, and things like that. For the assessment activities, the by far most used one is the assessment. The assessment can execute many types of voting in the same assessment. So that's also one of the core activities. And then last but not least, the matrix activity, which is a customizable spreadsheet that can capture and different kinds of information into two dimensions, just like a spreadsheet can do. Those are the core activities that think tank session leaders needs to manage. Let's take a look at them in think tank. The core activities you can do with think tank is found under the Designer tab. Here you can see where the crowdsource lives. It's the most important one, to the custom crowdsource. Under the assessment activities, this is where custom assessment is, and this is an example of what it looks like. Under here you can see a number of different versions of the custom assessment activity. This is set up for a yes/no vote. This is, for instance, set up for numeric vote. This is set up for thumbs up and thumbs down agreement. So you can see the different options here. Under visual activities, this is where you find a presentation activity that can show PowerPoints and give you comments. There's also a picture this activity, which are used for discussions about different types of pictures. Matrix activities are found here. Here you got the custom matrix, which is an example of the matrix setup in 2 dimensions. You've got the columns and you've got the rows. And there are different versions of this custom matrix set up as standards here. One of the ones we use often is, of course, an action-oriented one where you can actually develop an action plan. And last but not least, and this is might be interesting for you, if you have created an activity in another session, you actually have a chance to find it here and input it into this situation, this think tank session. So let's say you run another couple of activities and you had one that's called presentation. Then you put the name of the activity, which you can find over here. We can also do introduction. You press return, and then it will show you what type of activities from what sessions that you've used before, and then you can input it. You just mark it out blue and add it to my agenda, and then that specific introduction will be added into the session. So with that, these are the key activities that you need to manage with think tank.